Hello and welcome to Starside Chat. We're doing a special Anthem edition this week, and we'll have a video version of this just to put up some gameplay and everything. Joining me to discuss Anthem is Aaron Capo.
Hello.
So, what's your experience with the beta or demo?
The beta, you were kind enough. You're part of the elite EA players squad. What is it?
I mean, you nailed it. I think that's right. It's the, Origin Access Premiere?
And you were kind enough to give me a beta key, which was platform agnostic, as they say. So even though you're playing it on PC, I just got a code and I could play it on anything. So I plugged it into my PS4 and loaded it up. And I walked around the hub area for quite some time. And I ran into a bartender who was voiced by Jack McBrayer. And
I thought that's who that was.
Yeah, he was an actor, I guess. He was having trouble. I don't remember.
No, was he? I don't remember.
He was having a hard time because I think like a lady was hitting on him, but the lady was married. But anyway, then I got into my Javelin, and I was very confused about how to properly launch the mission.
Yeah, I had that problem too.
And then I launched the mission, and then it loaded for 30 minutes, and then dumped me into what I assume was the final boss encounter of the mission. And then I was just like lagging all around, and then I just quit. And then the next day the beta ended. So that is my experience with Anthem.
You waited like 30 minutes and it actually did load the thing?
Yeah, it was crazy. Well, so I waited like 30 minutes and I was like, this is not happening. So I logged out, I closed the program, or like closed the software, logged it back in, and it said like, you are part of an expedition. Do you want to rejoin that expedition?
Oh, yeah.
And so I was like, sure. And I clicked it, and then it like another 10 minutes went by, and then it loaded into this like final realm, and I just kept getting destroyed and like glitching through walls, and then I quit.
Well, yeah, as I understand it, the beta was definitely, I keep calling it a beta. It's a demo. Like, demo and beta, it gets used pretty interchangeably these days, and for a lot of people, it seems like this probably should have been called a beta and not a demo, but at the same time, the version of this game that we got to play for the VIP demo, and that will be available again next weekend for the free open demo, is not exactly like what we're going to play on day one when it gets launched, because it's like, I don't know how far in advance you have to send this stuff to like Microsoft and Sony to get it certified.
Yeah.
But like it's weeks behind on like bug updates and like other fixes. And they even said like the balance of like weapons and powers and stuff is not up to like where they are right now. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, bear that in mind as you recall your struggles to actually play the game. But yeah, it was real rough for console players in particular. I think Xbox players had it the worst, where a lot of them couldn't even get past like the main screen or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the most common bug was the 95% loading glitch, where you would try to load something and it looked like it was almost done, and it would take a really long time to get there, which actually was how you knew you were going to get the 95% load bug, because if you were actually loading it wouldn't take that long. So that was an interesting thing. I can't believe you just like waited long enough and it eventually went through. But
the benefit of having a Switch, man, you could just pull your Switch off the dock, and I was just like playing some Mario Odyssey while I was waiting.
Interesting. Well, yeah, once I was able to get through some of that stuff, well, also, like, right in the middle of all of this, like, nonsense, this fiasco, Origin went down, the EA's client on PC. Mm-hmm. So, like, I was watching Twitch streamers as well, because I was trying to get in, and Twitch streamers were trying to play, and at one point, Origin went down because everybody was trying to like sign out of Origin and sign back in again to see if that would help. And so they'd sign out and then they couldn't get signed back in again. It was real rough for everyone. But so you did not get to play really much at all, if anything.
Not really, no. I'm relying on you to tell me all about it.
Well, so once people did get in, the general consensus was that it was a lot of fun, and I had a lot of fun, and it was a lot of fun to just like that moment when you first like start flying, that's like a pretty big moment. Plus, like the game is like the environments are very, very pretty as well, especially on PC.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. You're showing me some footage right now, and it's like absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, so I put up gameplay of all 4 javelins because on Sunday, with like 5 hours left to go before the like beta closed or whatever, they unlocked all the javelins so that you could, if anybody had participated in the VIP demo, they get access to all of them. I don't think that'll carry over to the people who are going to take part in the open demo next week, but so yeah, I got to try them all out. And so yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I immediately want to play more of it.
So it's not like Destiny, where at the start you have to pick a certain class, right? You're not locked into one javelin decision, right?
So the way it starts is you're given a ranger javelin to start with, and in this is in the demo, but also in the main story, your unlocks for more javelins are level 2, level 8, I think 16 and 28 or something like that. Those numbers might not be right, but basically you start out with a ranger, and then that's like a temporary thing, and then eventually you're like, okay, now you get to pick a javelin of your own. Which one do you want to use? So you get to pick the one that gets to be your first, basically. So like my understanding is that the first javelin that you get to in the actual story it's sort of like an intro cutscene that gets you to level 2, and then you like walk away with your first javelin, basically. But
then mission to mission, you can swap out javelins? Or in mission, can you do it?
Not during, like once you've left, and this is another thing that kind of bothers me a little bit, is that like it's not a huge issue, but you can definitely like leave Fort Tarsis with a less than ideal loadout, and unless you like leave and head back to Fort Tarsis to switch up your equipment, there's no way to do that just like on the fly. So like I definitely loaded into a mission with like a sniper rifle and a shotgun loadout one time, and like some javelin abilities that I didn't particularly like, and I got into it and I was like, oh, this is a real bad combo, and because I was like always out of ammo. So you are looting. This is a looter shooter. Am I correct in saying that? Yes.
But do you have an inventory like Destiny where you can go into the field with multiple weapons that you can pull out, or you're locked into those 2 weapons?
No. So yeah, when you leave, I guess it's more realistic. Like when you leave, you have just what you take with you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But when you're back at Fort Tarsis, you have this, it's kind of, I forget what they call it. It's the Forge, I think is what they call it. And you have your javelin, and basically you can equip anything that you have unlocked or grabbed up to that point, and you can craft new stuff as well. So like as you use stuff, you will like sort of unlock blueprints for them, so you can craft sort of like higher tiers of them. And once I figured out how to do that, the Devastator sniper rifle that I have, I'll probably have some gameplay of, that is super powerful because it like fires this explosive shot. I just like crafted one of those for each of my javelins, basically, so that I would not have to swap them out. And it was just my secondary weapon on everything.
Interesting. So you can duplicate weapons?
Yeah, I mean, you could make or find as many of them as you want. It's kind of like Destiny, where when you get a weapon, you don't like just have one of them. You can potentially get many of them, and so you're sort of dismantling them, the ones you don't want. You get sort of components and stuff like that that you can use to craft other things.
So wait, let me ask you this. Are there random rolls?
There are. I'm glad you asked me that, because this is where it gets very interesting, because as you can see here in the Forge, if I go into customize, this is my Storm Javelin, my Storm's Blast Seals, that's just like one of my javelin attacks. You have these they're each different tiers of rarity. So yeah, green is uncommon and blue is rare, and that's the highest you can get in the demo. But you can see down here, it has different perks down at the bottom of each card, basically. And
wait, so these are abilities?
Yeah, well, these are abilities, but you basically have this on everything. So when I go in to look at the like focus seal, all of them, they also have little perks attached to them. And when you go into the weapons, so like my Devastator sniper rifle, it also has little perks. So like plus 5% javelin sniper rifle ammo and plus 2% shield recharge rate. Even more interesting than that, there's also the support seal that also has like little perks attached to them. And there's also rarity to each of them, and that will determine your I guess power level. It's kind of like light level in Destiny.
Interesting.
More interesting is the armor components, because if you look at this, you'll unlock more of these slots. So by the time you get to rank 30, which I think is the highest level, you'll have 6 of these armor component slots. And as you are continuing to unlock these up to like legendary or whatever the highest level is, they will each have different perks attached to them as well. And so if you wanted to make like a really interesting build, like the Storm is not really a melee character, but say you wanted to make a melee Storm character, if you use like armor and shield armor components for like several of these slots, and then like melee damage and like maybe some elemental damage ones in here, you could make a pretty powerful melee build from this. And then you could there's also consumables, which by the way are like straight out of Mass Effect 3 multiplayer, like that cooperative multiplayer that I played way too much of back on the 360 generation. But you can craft these, and you can have up to 3 of these consumables, and they're basically like single use bonuses. And yeah, so you basically can add like a ton more interesting aspects to your javelin.
So let's say, it seems like maybe there's a consumable that you pop it and then you do bonus damage to like a boss. You could get 3 of those and then just like be popping those during a boss encounter and have an easier time.
So yeah, like before you left on the expedition, you would equip 3 of these, and say you wanted to make it so that your lightning damage does more, or your lightning powers do more damage or something like that. You could just load up on those. Or if you wanted to make your guy more survivable, you could load up on like armor component pieces and consumables. And then,
what are the components of these?
It requires something called Ember. I don't know. They're elements that you pick up in free play, basically, or elements that you will acquire by dismantling items.
Planetary materials, you might say.
Yeah, sort of like planetary materials from Destiny. And so, yeah, you can craft these, and I'm assuming they will also go up in rarity as well. That gets interesting because you will need them for the difficulties. So as your like late game stuff, you'll be trying to complete all the like strongholds and everything and other activities on like Grandmaster 1, 2, and 3. And the higher level thing you do, like enemies do more damage, the masterwork drop chance is increased, or...
Zach, it says enemies' damage and health is increased by 3,100%?
Yes. So, as you can imagine, these get very difficult. And I believe I sent you something where, like, one of the devs was like, I haven't even completed that yet. Like, I can't do it yet.
What's the reward?
Well, you get legendary stuff. Like, you'll get rarity drops that are legendary, which I assume is the highest. Mm-hmm. And so what you eventually want to do is you want to have all of these items in your inventory be legendary. And you want the god roll. You want the one that has all the best perks down here. Mm-hmm. So you're just like in Destiny, where everybody's looking for that god roll everything. Like there are so many different component slots. Like you'll have all of these slots that you want to fill up with legendary items, basically.
But you said so. But you can, if like you have that Devastator sniper rifle, so that means that going forward you can craft that sniper rifle, right?
I can, but I don't know what it takes to get the components to be able to do it. You know what I mean? Like you probably will have to complete those higher tiers of difficulty in order to get the components to be able to craft that level of gear.
But supposedly when you craft it, it gets a new random roll.
Yes. So I did craft some stuff in the demo, and you do get a random roll with it. Like some of them were bugged in the demo, so it was like saying stuff that was not accurate. But you'll get a random roll even when you craft something or when you find it in like a box of some sort, like a chest while you're playing.
So wait, am I understanding that even your ability perks can have random rolls, like your ice blast or whatever?
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Crazy.
Yeah, so not only does that give you like a very intense level of customization, but it also gives you a bunch of stuff to be like grinding for. You know what I mean? Like people were upset that like armor wasn't interesting in Destiny Year 2 or Destiny 2 for the
Destiny
longest
2
time.
in general.
Yeah, Destiny 2 in general. That won't be the case here because there's going to be so much stuff that you can do for it and so many interesting things to try to unlock for it. And also, the customization is going to like blow Destiny 2 out of the water just in terms of like right now in Destiny 2, it's basically what exotic armor can I equip and what super am I going to use? But in this game, you have a lot more that you could possibly do.
A thing that I have had a problem with Destiny in general, even Destiny 1, was I'll get a drop of a cool gun, but its light level will not be super high. Is that an issue here where like you'll get a drop and it will not behoove you to use that weapon because your weapons are better?
I mean, you will definitely get drops that are not as high level as what you already have equipped. But what you can do is as you use it, you'll eventually unlock the blueprint and you should be able to craft it at your current level.
But do you need some sort of like radiant light or some nonsense in order to boost it up to your correct level?
I'm not sure. Yeah, like I said, it could be that if you want to craft a legendary version of the Devastator sniper rifle, that you will eventually need to complete Grandmaster 3 in order to get the components necessary to make a legendary version of that sniper rifle.
Man, the abilities in this game seem great.
I think my favorite is the Storm.
Well, let's get into it because I wanted to talk about that. The Storm is someone I don't really know. They like kind of teased it at E3, but they weren't really talking about Storm because he's like the caster, basically, the mage. Right?
Yeah, and I really like the playstyle because it is basically you can hover for a lot longer than everyone else. So your little bar of how fast you overheat goes down super slowly while you're hovering, and you might even get a little bit of extra overshield while you're hovering. So basically, the play style is to hover and basically be this hovering turret and just be like casting powers from a distance.
Yeah, because in your gameplay footage, it seems like whenever you're the Storm, like very rarely are you using your actual like weapons that you have equipped. You're mostly using your abilities.
Yeah, so I guess if you want to make the equivalent of like to Mass Effect, it would be the Adept, where you're basically using primarily you're casting all your abilities. And the thing I like is that you can basically do that and touch the ground very, very little if you wanted to. And the other cool thing about the Storm is that his melee is a detonator. So like if I use this frost shard thing that I have, which you see on the bottom right, I have 10 charges of. So I can throw a bunch of them and they don't do a ton of damage by themselves, but they do freeze enemies. And when I dive down in melee, it does a combo on them, and that snap freezes everyone in the area. And so you can combo those. I don't have the ability, or I didn't have the ability during the demo that was the alternate one where you would then call in like a lightning strike. For your other power, I just had the flame burst one, where you just which is pretty good for like area of effect damage to deal damage to multiple enemies. But if you want to like set up and cause your own combos, you can do that with the like flame, or not the flame, the ice shards and whatever the lightning bolt one is that I didn't end up unlocking.
That's something else I know it's a selling point of this game, and you were trying to explain it to me. We were texting about it earlier this week. I still don't really understand how, like, partnering up with someone and doing combos together works, like elemental combos.
So certain abilities are primers and certain abilities are detonators, which is very similar to Mass Effect. I think it'll say on the actual ability card which one is which. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you can just test it. But I mean, the Ice Shard was one of my favorite abilities, one of my go-to abilities with the Storm, because you could freeze enemies to keep them from like shooting at you and your teammates, but it also like set them up for combos. And then like even the Ranger, like the Ranger's melee is a primer. So it like puts a static or a electricity effect on somebody, and then if he shoots them, then with like his wrist-mounted rocket, that's a detonator. So you can do a lot of them yourself, or you can just like prime them and have other people do the detonating of the combos.
So is it a binary thing where you're just priming and then detonating, or is it a stackable thing where you can do tiers upon tiers of priming and then do a big detonation?
That's a good question. I don't actually know the answer to that. I think it probably is like once they've been detonated, you would need to prime them again.
Right.
But that's just a guess. I would assume that would be the case. That was how it was in Mass Effect.
Moving on from classes, now we're looking at what I think is the Interceptor? Yes. Interceptor? Who is melee focused, it looks like, and it seems insane.
Yeah, so I initially didn't think I was going to like the Interceptor because it felt like for one, I'm not normally a huge fan of like close range melee style characters, but the Interceptor is so much fun because it's so fast and so agile. And the melee is actually super effective. And I told you it was kind of like the Blade Dancer subclass from Destiny. Yeah. But it's also, it's probably even more akin to the dual blade Rogue from Dragon Age. And like the whole thing is like getting in really quickly and hacking and slashing and then dodging and getting out again.
They nailed the animations where you're like whipping around and like twirling through the air. Like it looks very beautiful.
It looks incredible, especially the Interceptor, just because the Interceptor does flip around like crazy.
Yeah.
And yeah, that animation of like being still and then going into your flying, like that animation is pretty amazing and very, very satisfying.
So we've got the caster, we've got the melee. You said the first one you start out with is the Ranger. Is that like the all-around class?
Yeah, so the Ranger is the one everybody's probably seen the most of. That's the one that is supposed to be like a good starter class because it has decent amounts of like shielding and armor. And it's basically the soldier class from Mass Effect where you throw out grenades and then you have something that's kind of like a rocket or like a concussive shot type of a thing.
Yeah. The boring class is what you're saying.
I actually don't think it's that boring. It seems kind of boring just because it is the starter class, but it's actually really cool. And like the ultimate is like that thing from Iron Man, right? Where he selects a bunch of targets and fires off a bunch of little mini rockets that does a bunch of damage to either one target or like takes out a bunch of smaller ones.
Wait, how do ultimates work?
So ultimates, they're kind of like in Destiny where you have to wait for them to charge up. And then on the bottom right, you can see there's like a little thing that says up on the D-pad, which I feel like I will probably switch to the same button press that it is in Destiny, the LB and RB buttons.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's basically the same. It basically works the same way. and it does like massive amounts of damage, or it's like the blade dancer for the interceptor, and it's it does a lot of damage, and most of the time I think the storm is the only one that actually like primes for combos though.
But is there more than one?
No, so there is only one for each javelin. I'm wondering if they're ever going to add additional ones. I feel like they'll add more javelins before they add additional ultimates to each javelin.
So you mentioned the Colossus. We just saw the Colossus's ultimate. That seems like a crazy class.
Yeah, so I thought I was going to like the Colossus more than I did. I think it doesn't quite feel as tanky as I thought it was going to, is the only issue. And it's built mainly around like holding that additional shield you have up, because it doesn't have a shield bar. It just has a health bar. And its shield is a physical shield that you hold up. And it can break.
You even like when you're in the air flying, you're holding the shield in front of you, which I thought was cool.
Yeah. So you can fly around holding the shield out. And it is pretty satisfying to just like fly around and then just like dive bomb somebody and just do this massive melee attack on them. But the coolest thing about the Colossus is having the flamethrower that primes targets, and then having this lightning coil for your other ability, where you activate it and it just sort of automatically starts hitting enemies nearby, just like chaining out to them. And that will actually detonate the combo. But unfortunately, I did not unlock the flamethrower while I was playing, so I didn't get to try that out.
It is crazy. So we talked a lot about Mass Effect and Dragon Age. And my one interaction with an NPC in this game, it has me a little worried about the dialogue in this game. Because you see those graphics of like Fallout New Vegas, and it has like a dialogue option from Fallout New Vegas, and there's like a paragraph of the person talking, and then you can pick like 3 paragraphs to say to him. And then the next thing is like Dragon Age, where you have like they tell you a paragraph, but then you basically have like up, down, left, right of like 2 or 3 word options, and then you click it and then you do something. And with this one, I was talking to Jack McBrayer, and he was like, what do you think I should do? And it was literally just press left trigger or right trigger. And then, I don't know, I felt like I did not have a lot of choice as far as the narrative goes.
Yeah, I think it's less about...
Because that's what the appeal of this was, like, interesting gameplay, but with that Bioware good storytelling.
Yeah, and I still hope that that's what it ends up being, but I think you're right. I think the fact that they only have 2 options and they're not super specific.
Maybe that was that one instance. Did you talk to any other NPCs? Is it always a binary, like 2 options, trigger buttons, or is there like sometimes a third option?
No, all the conversations I had were just left trigger or right trigger, so there were only 2 options. But none of the conversations I had were like meaningful story related missions.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's true.
I don't know whether it's going to be one or the other, or if they're going to have additional dialogue options depending on the types of missions you're doing. But my impression from what I've heard is that you're basically, as far as the story goes, there are a bunch of different like groups or factions, and you're sort of aligning yourself with some of them. And like one thing that you say to one of the groups will either like a different group will either like or dislike that depending on how you've reacted to them. So it is sort of more of like, are you hot and cold towards this person or that person, or do you like the types of things they're saying, or do you not go along with them? But
speaking of being hot, you never get to see your character's face.
Well, I mean, I don't know what the cutscenes are like.
I mean, it seems like whenever you're in Fort Tarsis, you're in first person. When you picked in the starting thing that I got to do, it was just male or female voice.
Right. I'm okay with that, to be honest. If that does end up being the case, like, I'm fine with it. Although I have heard that there is like a very basic character creator.
Oh, really? Can you change the color of your javelin?
Yes. So
can you change the color of the cape of the
You can.
storm?
You can change the material of it.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so you can you like where you go into the forge to like customize your loadout, you can also tab over to the appearance and like you have emotes and stuff in there, but you can go into the paint job and it's very like it's a fairly intense amount of stuff because you can change. They have all these different material types that you can choose from.
Now, are you like finding in the world different shaders that you then have to spend money to apply?
No, it's all this. This is how you customize. This was not like stuff you had to find anywhere. This is just like how you customize them. Like, yeah, you can change the type of metal, whether it's aged or not, the type of cloth.
That's very cool.
Like whether the metal is rugged or aged or clean, or whether it's like clean plastic or like cloth or whatever. And then if it's like a metal type, you can change basically the way it shines. Like these ones are sort of there's not a whole lot of options to those, but there's a decent amount. Otherwise, the rest of them you can change a lot. There's a lot of colors that you can choose from.
Can you change the colors of the guns?
Not that I saw. I was kind of disappointed by that. I did want to, maybe the higher level ones you can. I wanted to be able to like put a skin or something on my weapons. Maybe that's a thing that you'll be able to do with the like higher tier versions of the weapons. But
you know, I'm looking at this storm, and you know what games it reminds me of that it isn't Destiny is Warframe, which I know you have played a little bit of.
Yeah, I think it's getting probably just as many references to like Warframe as it is like The Division and Destiny.
What do you think it's more similar to, Destiny or Warframe?
I mean, it has a little bit of all of them, to be honest. Like there's a little bit of Destiny, there's a little bit of Warframe, there's a little bit of The Division, and there's a little bit of Monster Hunter World. And like there's a little bit of Mass Effect even. I mean, it's a little bit of a lot of things, but...
Are you harvesting stuff from creatures in the world?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like you're going around and grabbing different items. I don't think, like, the similarities to Monster Hunter World are less in, like, whether you're taking items from, like, monsters that you've killed, and whether instead it's more like you're at this social hub that you're sort of by yourself at. There is like a social space that you can go to, and like you can sort of emote and see the different javelin that people have created or whatever and the loadout that they have. But for the most part, when you're actually doing story stuff, you're by yourself, which is exactly the way they did it in Monster Hunter World as well. And then, yeah, you're basically accepting contracts to go out and like do different jobs or whatever.
But there is a free roam mode, right? You can just drop into the world and not have objectives?
Yeah, and while you're out there, there are like world events, which are, I'm assuming, kind of similar to like public events in Destiny.
Zach, this brings up an interesting question that we've not seen yet in your footage. Is there a map?
There is a map. Unfortunately, I don't know that I actually have any footage of it, but I went to the free roam maybe once or twice. The issue I had with free roam is one of the things that worries me about this game is that when you go out into free roam, you can like fly around and do some stuff, and there might be some like world events going on, and you can like take out enemies and harvest resources and like find codex entries and like find new locations. But you also will find and try to enter these places that are essentially like dungeons that you can go enter, and there are like little sort of side missions to do there. And in order to get into them, you have to get through a loading screen. And
is there matchmaking for those, or can you do them solo?
I think you just can do that. I'm not sure. So this is another thing that confuses me and slightly worries me about it, is that it seems like it wanted to pull whoever was in free roam with you as if they were your party along with you, and that was very confusing to me. I would imagine you can do them by yourself because you can queue into everything solo It just sort of advises against it because obviously if I tried to join a stronghold by myself, I would struggle mightily. But
what is a stronghold?
A stronghold is that swarm tyrant mission that I put video up of. It feels very akin to like a strike or a nightfall in Destiny.
Okay. So it's an instanced thing, not in the grander scheme of things, not in the world.
Correct.
Zach, is your mind made up about what class you're going to start as when you get the game?
I am pretty sure I'm going to end up picking the Storm, but I will say for someone who was initially not really all that interested in the Interceptor, I really kind of started to like the Interceptor a lot based on like I only got to play 2 missions, or I did the Stronghold twice with that Javelin, and like already I really started enjoying it. So
I assume it benefits you to stick to one class for a while, right? Like are you gaining experience and spending them on unlocks specific to that Javelin?
You are. So the like items that you get from chests and from completing things or from like killing bosses or whatever, they are sort of specific to the Javelin that you're using at the time. Okay. But at some point you'll start getting to the point where you've got most of the unlocks for that class, and so you'll start seeing unlocks for other classes. At least that's how it was in the demo. I don't know how that will play out in the full game, but like I had gotten to the point where I think I had gotten most of the unlocks for the Storm, and I started getting unlocks for the Colossus and the Interceptor, and I was like, I can't even unlock those classes yet. But that became useful later when Bioware eventually unlocked the other 2 Javelins so that we could use them. But
it doesn't feel like different, like to use another Destiny metaphor, it's not like your main is like a warlock, and like when you swap javelins, I guess what I'm asking is like if there's a hard like Nightfall-esque mission, can you do it with each javelin to get like different rewards each time?
You should be able to. So like you can always equip 2 weapons, like whatever your best 2 weapons are, you could just equip that with the new javelin you just unlocked. And of course you can use like the armor components and any of that stuff that you've unlocked. And you may be getting unlocks like different abilities while you get unlocks for your Storm. Like you're playing the Storm, you may get some unlocks that are for the Interceptor or something like that, so that when you get your Interceptor, you'll have something. But yeah, you can always equip like the weapons and the armor components on any class.
Interesting. So like let's say you're playing as your Interceptor, and like you're getting like high legendary drops because your power level, I assume, denotes what kind of drops you get, right?
Yeah.
And then you switch over to Colossus, which you haven't really played with a whole lot. You can equip those high level weapons and increase its power level, right?
Yeah. The only thing is you might just be a little bit behind in terms of like your javelin abilities. So like you might have to struggle through a stronghold where you're like, please give me some drops that give me like better like RB and LB abilities so that I can deal more damage with those, or, you know, something like that.
How did you find the enemies? Like good AI, good design?
There was a bug where there was like some occasionally disappearing enemies, but I think that was more happening in free roam that I didn't play a lot of. It wasn't happening a lot, at least to me, during the stronghold. And the I don't know if it was like part of the server problems or like a bug or something, but occasionally you'd get some like brain dead enemies that would just kind of stand there and not do anything.
Yeah.
But you would also get some enemies that were like super strong and would just like come after you. And so it was kind of a mixed bag of like, what is this guy doing? And then like, oh my gosh, can this guy please stop targeting me right now?
Well, speaking of enemies, with the boss, there was one boss in the beta, correct? The swarm guy?
Yeah.
How was that as a boss encounter? Was it just a bullet sponge, or were there mechanics to it? Like, was there any kind of coordination needed?
I mean, it was basically your standard issue bullet sponge, which is pretty par for the course for this type of a game. Like, every single one of these games has bullet sponge bosses.
Well, I mean, Destiny has started mixing it up a little bit.
True. Yeah, they're getting better at designing their strikes so that the encounters with those bosses are a little bit more interesting. I would say this felt like a little bit more like one of the earlier Destiny strikes, not in that it was like a guy who just like stood in one part of the map and just like stood there and waited for you to do enough damage to kill him, because he does move around and he'll jump at you and he'll go away for a little while and it'll be like phase 2 or whatever, and a bunch of like little ads will come out and you'll have to deal with them before the enemy pops up. So he's not like a boring boss, I would say, but he also doesn't have any particularly interesting mechanics, although you can he does have these sort of like glowing sacks on his sides and his like tail part that you can shoot off, and that'll do damage and it'll like knock him down for a little while so you can hit him a bunch. But other than that, he's a pretty standard issue bullet sponge style boss. My hope is that some of the other bosses they have are a little bit more interesting and just the mechanics of it. But overall, like, I don't know how many times I ran that stronghold and I didn't really get that bored of it. So that's a pretty good sign. It could also just be that the game is new and I was very interested in checking out all the different javelins. But
how did you find the ammo economy to be?
It's pretty good. So like the health and ammo drop fairly regularly. And it kind of needs to, especially if you're like a Colossus who doesn't have shields. So you're gonna need to run around and pick up those little health packs. But even the Interceptor, that's a melee character, will need to be picking them up because they're going to be in close quarters. And so the good thing about it is if you're meleeing these guys, if you're in melee range, the health packs and ammo will just drop right next to you. So if your health is low, just meleeing the person closest to you could just like save your life or whatever, or like give you back your health that you needed.
We talked about the combos a whole lot, but is there any other way to buff or like help the people that you're playing with? Like, can you heal them or drop down like increased damage buffs or anything like that? There
is. So the Ranger has something called a bulwark point, which is basically a little bubble shield. It doesn't survive like a sniper shot, but it's also like a super low level version of it. I'm assuming as you get a higher level version of it, it will be able to survive more. But he also has one, and I want to say the Storm has one as well, that like buffs, it's either weapon damage or it's ability recharge rate. And so you just like put those down and it's a little field that you can stand in and your abilities will recharge faster or your weapons will do more damage or something like that. So there is some buffing. I don't think there's healing. So you don't have that, but you do have
Is there any sort of like Zenyatta well of radiance or whatever where you're just like immortal wherever you stand?
No, unfortunately. Although like basically the shield is all you have. So like if your team is getting wrecked, you want Rangers dropping those bubble shields. And the Storm also has one that's called a wind wall. That's basically just a shield wall. So
I saw you drop one of those, in the footage.
So you have those. And I'm wondering, honestly, because I have the feeling that in the months following the release of Anthem, that they will be releasing tons of new javelins to play as.
Really? You think so?
It may not be tons. It may just be like one or two every now and then. But like, I go back to Mass Effect 3 multiplayer, which I played a ton of. It was probably the game I spent the most time playing last generation. And like they supported that game like crazy for a year, which was the plan, was to support it for a year. This game, obviously, their plan is to support it a lot longer than that, but they were dropping content for that regularly, like crazy. Like every couple of months there was like, here's 3 new characters. Go try to find an interesting build with them. Here's like 5 new interesting weapons that are like really cool and more powerful than the stuff you used to use. And here's like some new maps. Here's some new enemies to fight. There was like all kinds of stuff that they were dropping. So I'm curious if they do add a healer type of a javelin at some point.
Interesting. Do you think it'll be paid or free? Or is there any kind of season pass with this?
I think they've said that all DLC will be free.
Really?
I think that they said the only stuff you'll pay for is like cosmetic stuff.
Yeah. Oh, is there some sort of Eververse in Fort Tarsis?
Yeah, you couldn't access it during the demo, but there is essentially an Eververse in the game that you'll be able to buy some cosmetics if you want to.
It's a beautiful game. Did you go underwater at all?
Yeah, so that was actually one of the pain points of the Stronghold mission. There's like 2 parts where you go underwater, and it was so dark underwater that nobody knew where to go. So like the first,
does your javelin have lights on it or anything?
It does, and it turns them on, but they're like not bright enough, and they don't go far enough out. So like it was very easy to get lost until you figure out like the route to take. And you can see, like, if you go watch the gameplay I put up, like, I figured out where to go. So I kind of had an idea of which direction to go every time. So I made it look way easier than it was the first time I played it. Like, the first time I played it, I went the completely wrong direction. And, like, it was awful. So I think they need to... I don't know, make it brighter, make the light brighter so it's easier to know where to go.
Speaking of having trouble navigating, you said you had trouble with this too. I spent like literally 5 minutes trying to figure out how to launch a mission because you have to go into it and then like you select a bunch of different things. Like you select like a difficulty level, and then you have to select where you want to go on the map. But then you have to back out of that menu, and then you launch the mission, which I did not figure out for a good amount of time. Did you have similar?
Yeah, I had the same problem initially where I like sat there for like 5 minutes, just like you, where I was like, okay, I'm trying to launch this. This is what I want to do. And so I was just mashing A. I was like, why is this not going? Like, that's the thing. I'm clicked on it. Why is it not doing anything? And yeah, it took me a while to figure out that you're basically on that map. You're just like... selecting the activity you want to do, but you have to back out of it to actually launch it, which seemed weird and not a great design to me. I think the overwhelming sentiment is that the first major patch they need to do is overhauling the UI and like the menu design, because like the angles of it are cool to look at, but it's just not super intuitive for like navigating.
Yeah, it's like it also feels like it's not economical with the screen space. It almost reminds me of like the original Xbox 360 like cards.
Oh yeah,
almost.
those blades.
Yeah, the blades.
Yeah, that was awful. And the thing is, they could totally overhaul that. Like we've seen Bungie do that with Destiny all the time. So not all the time, but you know, they've overhauled the menus a little bit. So.
Did you play this with mouse and keyboard, or with it seems like you played it with a controller?
I played it with controller specifically because I've heard from the devs themselves even, this isn't just like something people have complained about, but like flight controls are not great with a mouse. You are going to have to like tweak your sensitivity some.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's not like Destiny where it's a first person shooter that requires like precision aiming, and like there are weak hit points that you'll want to hit, but it's not like every enemy you're going to be like, okay, I need to hit this headshot, but also it's not PvP. And that's probably the biggest thing, is that there's no PvP. So you're not going to be looking for that edge. So I feel like it's fine if you just want to use controller on PC for this game.
They've said like there's never going to be any PvP.
They said there's no PvP, at least at launch. I guess you can't rule out that they might add it at some point down the line, but I don't want them to. I feel like they would it would break so much, because how do you balance these 4 javelins?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like, Bungie's has enough problems trying to balance Destiny 2's PvP. It was kind of the same thing with Mass Effect 3 multiplayer, where you would have people in the forums, the Bioware forums, saying like, when are we going to get PvP? When is this going to be a PvP mode? And everybody was like, no, like that would be awful. Can you imagine having to try to balance that? Like, there's no way that you could make all these different class abilities and the powers and the weapons. Like, it's so much to have to try to balance. And I feel like it would be awful if they tried it. So I am actually glad that there's not PvP. And I would much rather they focus on adding more interesting stuff to do. And
well, so that's another question. How varied and different do you think the missions are going to be from each other? Like, is it the Destiny style where you hack a console, you kill a bunch of things, you kill a boss? Or do you think there's going to be more interesting things to do in this world?
It's hard to say, because I feel like the stronghold that they gave us is basically very, very similar to a Destiny mission that is kind of like that, where it's like, here's the defense section where you have to hold your ground for a little while, and then here's the boss. But they also kind of use the flight mechanics earlier on in the mission, where you have to go find those orbs and return them to like a certain point or whatever. And so it makes pretty decent use of like the verticality that's available.
That's a good point. It does look very fun to fly.
It never gets old, I will say. It's a game that probably feels significantly better to play than it feels to watch, just because there's not a great way to, like, I don't know, give whoever's watching the feeling of like flying around. But anyway.
Zach, rate this beta experience.
Oh gosh. Well, so I mean, you would have to give it a fairly low score just because there were so many people that couldn't actually play it.
Well, but yours personally, though. You seem like very hot on this now.
I am very high on the game itself. And it should also be noted that they said a lot of the bugs that they were dealing with were already fixed for the main game, or are fixed in the main game. And so this demo and next weekend's demo will sort of have to struggle through the fact that it's dealing with some problems that were not fixed yet and can't really be fixed, or are like not worth fixing just for this one little demo. That's sort of, you know, it's like, why are they going to spend that much dev time to like fix bugs that they've already fixed in the main game, especially since this is not what they're moving forward with. They already have what's going to actually be available at retail. So It's sort of a weird position to be in, I guess. But at the same time, they have to make it look good, because people are trying to decide whether they want to buy this game based on what they're playing here.
Yeah. I mean, the real test is going to be next week because it's open, so that's going to be much more of a stress test for their servers.
Yeah, that's what I kind of want people to take away from this. Like, if you canceled your pre-order because of how last weekend went, like, that makes sense. That's fine. Like, wait and see. You should probably wait and see. But, like, play next weekend, or at least try, and then, like, the way Bioware, whether they fixed it or not, and how playable it is next weekend, I feel like might be pretty telling as to what to expect on launch day.
Yeah.
Although, there again, they said a lot of these issues they've resolved for the main game, so it could still possibly be that there's weird bugs and stuff that just like carried over from last weekend that were just unfixed, and it's just like, well, you know, whatever, it's the demo, like, who cares? This isn't in the main game. Just trust us that it's fine. And that's sort of a hard message to get across, but yeah, I think it's in a weird spot. But as far as my experience and what I actually got to play, I had a ton of fun with it. So I'm very, very excited about the full game. My voice is dying because I am sick, but
I'm also sick. It's a sick cast.
It's a sick cast, and we're struggling to get through it, but we're going to make it.
It's weird, speaking of health, it's weird that health orbs are red in this game and not green.
Yeah, I guess I didn't think about that. Are they usually green?
I mean, in God of War, they're green, and red is your rage. I feel like every health pickup is usually green, wouldn't you say? Red is more associated with, like, damage.
I guess that's true. I didn't think about it, but fair point.
And that's why I give this an F.
That's why you give it an F.
No, I'm just kidding. It looks really cool. Like, watching this footage has made me... I was not, like, super hot on the game, but I would say that I am marginally more hot on it after. And you told me that they're very interested in making things cross-platform in any way they can.
That's an important thing to mention as well. So, two things, actually. The devs are behind, like, cross-platform play. They want that to be a thing that's possible. So it could be in the future. I feel like that depends more on Sony, whether they allow that. But I guess, like, isn't Fortnite cross-play between PC and Xbox and everything?
Yes, Fortnite and Rocket League are the only two things, I believe.
Yeah, so it's possible that this game could be as well, but I don't know. Like, I feel like Sony's sort of holding things up in that area a little bit, at least as far as, like, the PlayStation side goes. But it's definitely possible. Like, it could be in the future. And the other interesting thing that I think is very cool is that if you, like, start playing the game and then dip out for a few months and then there's, like, new content that you want to play, you don't have to feel like you've lost ground with your friends who kept playing, because you guys can all play the content together and each be on different difficulty settings.
That's interesting. Like, so, like, I don't understand how that sliding scale works with, like, boss damage.
Well, I mean, so, like, if I'm low level, I'm not going to be doing huge amounts of damage, even though technically the boss is at a lower level for me. Like, it should scale relatively well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would like to see it in action, but I really like that idea where it, like, is client-side scaling so that no matter where you are power level wise, you and your friend can play if, like, you have not played for a while. That's the problem with Destiny.
Yeah.
Where, like, when one of us will stop playing prematurely, and then when a new thing comes out, I will be, like, super low light level, or you will be super low light level because one of us just, like, didn't play, or somebody played for, like, 2 weeks longer than the previous person. So, like, they are, like, 10 levels higher.
Yeah, and even, like, we eventually convinced one of our friends to get Destiny, and we basically had to either suffer through playing low-level content that wasn't giving us meaningful drops in order to help them get to where we were, or we just had to, like, wait on them and not play with them until they were able to reach about where we were at. Like, that won't be an issue with this game because everybody...
Yeah, this seems like a really elegant solution to that.
Yeah, so I was really excited when I heard that was what they were trying to do with this game.
Final thoughts, Zach?
Final thoughts. I understand being wary because of all the server issues. It wasn't a server capacity issue. It was some other bug that they had to resolve. But I had so much fun playing, which is why I feel like I need to, like, say, don't give up on it just yet. But if you want to wait and see, that makes sense. I get it. But give it a shot during the free weekend. And if you get a chance to play it, maybe you'll be converted the way I have.
Cool. Well, keep a lookout for more Anthem-themed videos because you're definitely getting it.
Yeah.
And we'll have a ton more to say probably when it launches, especially if it's a crazy launch.
And I will get to play it on the 15th as well.
Oh, yeah, because you're in Elite Squad.
I'm in Elite Squad, and so, yeah, I'll be playing it. I will try to maybe make some more videos about it and maybe, like, character builds that I like or something like that. And yeah, so follow on Twitter. I was tweeting about the demo over the weekend as well. So if you were following me, you got to live through that whole mess with me. Yeah, follow Starside Cafe on Twitter and send us an email at starsidecafe@gmail.com. Let us know what you thought of
Instagram also.
Oh yeah, and on Instagram, just look us up. We're on there. And we have a website at starsidecafe.com. And Yeah, let us know what your favorite javelin is, or what you're looking forward to, or what you didn't like.
#FaveJav.
I think that's going to start trending now, so.
All right. Well, yeah, we'll see you next time.
All right. Goodbye.
Goodbye.